Yeah, Louis Hall, the most prolific revolutionary never known. Like that's I mean, if you're in circles, like if you're on front lines or you're involved in organizing in the indigenous movement, you know who Louis Hall is. You know the name behind the artwork, but outside of that, a lot of people don't know, who he is. And so yeah, it is an important corrective. And the final sort of part of this interview, I wanted to talk about two things. One is the legacy of Oka, and what the lead up to it, because I think that is the most famous example, or what most people know about the Mohawk Warrior Society, and its its impact and its entry into mainstream. You see all these iconic images of that, but also it's also a very misunderstood event in history as well. And I think even just reading these oral histories, I learned so much, and it changed my understanding of how those events unfolded, and even in the aftermath. So I would like to ask all of you to maybe just think about what the legacy of Oka is, and what are the major misconceptions, and what are the major kind of takeaways for that particular event.
Yeah, I think that's really an important question. We were talking about it the other day because, well, right now, as Gantinetta said, we're involved in a lawsuit that's going on. It's at the old hospital, Royal Victoria Hospital here in Montreal, where there were allegations from survivors of actually the famous CIA mind control experiments, the MK Ultra program. Montreal was one of the main hubs, and there were allegations that Indigenous children were funneled from residential schools there, and there were people buried there. So, with a group, the Gani Stansra, which means, well, the women, the life givers, who have the custody over the land to caretake the land, sued McGill University, but also Canada and Quebec and the city of Montreal and all these parties to block to halt a redevelopment project on the land to check for unmarked graves. And well, since Kamloops, since those 200 or 215 graves were found in Kamloops, and many thousands afterwards in all these residential school sites throughout Canada, Prime Minister Trudeau admitted a genocide. And the Pope also, Pope Francis, came last summer and admitted to genocide. So that's a legal admission that opens this can of worms, which is what is the justification for Canada's existence, and how come is it European institutions that are reigning over Turtle Island like that, who purposefully try to make Indigenous people disappear from the face of this place. And the thing is that admission of genocide after the discovery of Kamloops, that followed the Truth and Reconciliation Commission that happened finished, I think, in 2015. And that itself was a follow up on the Royal Commission on Aboriginal Peoples that started immediately after the Oka crisis. So actually, it's this whole debate of the treatment of Indigenous people on Turtle Island, North America, that was really forced on the table by high profile uh, events such as the Oka crisis that really showed to the face of the planet that there's a problem here. These people are really just being denied their very existence. Just as a reminder, it was also for unmarked graves. Well, actually, it was an ancestral cemetery in the pines of Kanehsatà, just a Mohawk community just next to the French Canadian city of Oka, where Oka wanted to expand a golf course over that cemetery. So it was by opposing that that the police came. One policeman ended up dying in a shootout, and then the army took over, and it was this 78-day standoff with the Canadian Army, thousands of soldiers and tanks and helicopters, and harassing um, all the Mohawk communities around Ganastagi, Akwesasne, and Ganawage. And so we were the other day thinking about how these revelations, revelations for settler society, because Indigenous people knew about the unmarked graves, always knew about it and were talking about it. But now that it's being forced into the public debate, it kind of circles back to the basic justification of what why yeah of Canada's existence. And well, the US, it's also, to come, no one can deny the violence that happened in the US. But then it came in that conversation also that even though the Oka crisis had triggered all these national commissions about relationships with indigenous people by showing, how grave it was. Well, Oka itself has never been the object of such a reconciliation commission to see, the trauma that it can cause to have modern first world country armed forces surround indigenous communities and sparking, fights here in Ganawage. It was the army on one day landed on
The island.
the island here, and they just showed up in full gear. And the community, the people went there, and they had fist fights with them, to take them out. And they finally had to leave and take back the helicopters, and they couldn't. Were they going to shoot at the people? So, but that's intergenerational trauma that's still, lasting now, and that's settler society tries just not to open that bag of worms the same way it tried to, deny, because the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, its conclusion was that there was a cultural genocide. So trying to exterminate the culture. But then it's just a few years later that the bodies of children were discovered. And then it's not just a cultural genocide, it's trying to make those bodies disappear. It is a proper genocide. Uh, so, yeah, we're very much in the same situation where settler society seems incapable of addressing those fundamental questions that threaten its very existence. Um,
And I think that all of these instances that we took part in it, we were just doing our duties that we were born with, the women and the men, doing what we know how to do, how to bring forward and to show our children how to keep ourselves alive by keep asserting ourselves to what our rights are, our birthright. And I think in these instances it's bringing forward to the public, it's made more public because it's such a it's so Hollywooded out, if that could be a verb, you know. And I think it bringing back to the book and bringing back to what Garuyaktaje was, is that his brilliance and everything that he did and he understood is what he picked apart everything and brought all of the details into. And when you bring all those details to the surface, that's more to attack. And I think, to me, that's what he did, because he would never want to be glorified. He was just doing his duty, and he took his duty seriously. So he brought all that information to the people and tried to decipher as much as he could out of all religions and different laws and history and sciences and every topic that he brought to the surface. He studied them, picked them apart, and used them and gave it to us as a weapon. He did the homework for us. But we were also taught that anything that's told to us, we are to take it as that's how we were told, not this is the way it is. You're supposed to take what we're told and we're supposed to pick it apart and put it back together. And that's what Garuyaktaje did. And that's what he did. And that was his responsibility, as he's never been married. And it comes so through eloquently through his art and and all of his writings and everything. But that's what I appreciate about him. And I appreciate all the stories that, like my father going down the road and he says, "Hey, you get over here." And he made my father work out. He's like, "What do you do?" And my father told him what he did. And, "All right, get in here to be better at that. This is here. What are you going to do with it? You have this tools to do." So he ended up bodybuilding with Garnyak Daje. And he was so part of everybody's life. I used to see him. And then when he would speak, when I was growing up, my mother never said, "This is this is the way we conduct her. She just conducted herself. So growing up when I was little, I didn't know that I was part of something. I didn't realize that I was part of a way of life that was put together by people who've had such experiences until I got to an age where Gayenerdet Goa and all of our ceremonies and how they were put together. And I just lived it. But when I would listen to Garinok Taje talk, hey, I know this. This is the way my mother brought me up, you know? So for him, I understand his writings and his artwork because it comes through as that was what his duty was. And I think, I mean, it's great. This book, I love all the stories put together and how it was like intricately intertwined with each other. And he wouldn't want to be glorified, you know, but we are because it is quite, uh, quite, I can't even put a word to it. It's such a collection of all the wonderful things that he gave to his people.
You lived for us.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is what the Guyana Goa tells us, that we have to live for our people, for our children. And we all wake up every morning and that's what we think about. What are we doing today to help our children? And our children they really need us, even more so at the moment because we lost so much. We've been through this terrible, terrible genocide, and we're still going through it. We're still trying to get out of it, and it's going to be a while before we finally see that well, is this what we're supposed to, is this how we're supposed to be? We're not even sure of that because we were, like the children, like two of my brother and a sister, they were given these IQ tests and then they would take them away. And, uh, and he was going to be they were trying to train him to be a priest, and I guess he decided he did decide not to be one, but they came here and came after our children, and so now we have this duty to find these children. They're coming to us. We can feel that they're looking. I feel like they're looking for us, so we're trying to find them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think one of the most precious tools that Garunak gives is his idea of psychological warfare.
Yeah.
That is what is being waged on indigenous people, and especially in the period in the 60s and 70s where the residential schools were going full fledged and really trying to erase any trace of indigenous culture. And through all the means, his writings, but his paintings is just incredible. The vivid colors, and it has to do, it's like battling on the same plane as advertising and all, trying to get on the same plane as the enemy is trying to erase and get indigenous people to lose all courage, to feel bad about themselves, about their own culture, wanting to modernize, wanting to integrate society. But what he was doing was really to give this courage and muster the courage and belief in oneself, and especially in one's mind. The Garundegui was talking about this power of the mind, and it's really central in Mohawk culture. And just the word itself for mind, unikura, it means that which takes care of you. So it's with this notion of a mind. I think that's what makes the Mohawk resistance so strong. That all you need, you can be alone on the planet, the only person left. But if you still have your mind, it's going to take care of you, and you'll be able to survive and continue and accomplish your duties. And I think that was very much what Garunakdache was into, in a context that was genocidal, to give that that courage and trust in your own mind and its capacity in the world, without any religion or any thing to any external element. Everything is in creation, as distinct from the creator. There's no creator in this tradition. It's the creation itself has all the tools that you need to survive.
You know, he once told us a story when he was a butcher. He had already kind of left the church and that, and guys from town would go there and try to debate him. And they said, "Do you think you know everything?" That's what they asked him. He said, "No," he says, "but he says, I know between my brother and I, we can answer any question." So finally, day, he says this guy came in and he posed a question to him, and Kanehsatà had no idea how to answer the question. And he says to the guy, he says, "Oh," he says, "that's a question my brother can answer." But his brother had left the community maybe 10 years before, and nobody knew where he was. Nobody could find him. How they knew that he went to New York. So if you want the answer to that question, he says, "Go look for my brother." But always there was crazy stories like that. And that's one of the things we tried, even though we praise what he did, but we also wanted to know, let people know he was a human being, you know. And when this book came out, one of the younger women, she come up to me, she says, "No, I really like that book." She says, "You didn't make him like he was a god or nothing." She says, "You made him human." She says, most I liked about that book," she says, "is where I, in the book I tell about when he was sitting in the longhouse, and one of my grandmothers went in there because he's waiting for the social dance for people to gather. He was sitting in the longhouse by himself, and so she went and she sat next to him, and she took a whiff of him. She says, "Louis, did you fart?" He says, "Of course I did." He says, "Do you think I smell like this all the time?" Well, see, those are, and this is what one of the young. She's a mother, a young mother, and that she really appreciated the book. She learned a lot about the others, but it was keeping it human, you know. And that's one of the things about our people. Like as serious as we are about a lot of things, we're always laughing, no matter how dangerous a situation. Laughter is the best medicine because the laughter keeps you sane. You know, it keeps you sane. It's there to push away the fear. It's there to push away. I don't know what the other words are. Anxieties or whatever. That laughter keeps you sane. And sometimes people would see the discouraged doing something and we're laughing. We're going to be attacked in a little while, but we're all laughing. And people who don't know us says, "Look, they enjoy this. They're laughing." And somebody else would have to remind them, say, "Listen, be happy they're laughing. So when they're not laughing, that's when you got something to worry
Yeah.
about." You see?
And you got to remember what you're fighting for. Be
Yeah.
happy, you know.
You stay in control. You don't lose it when you're laughing.
Yeah.